Okay, this one. You want to post the link in places and themes? I like how we're both wearing Wolverine shirts, so.
It's magic.
Mine's overall X-Men, but like you can't lie, like Wolverine's the front man here.
Yeah, this is all Wolverine. He's like dragging the claws on the ground and
Good, good.
getting crazy with it.
We're in the Wolverine
Give
meta.
me chat.
Is that what this is?
Is it? Is that what it is?
No, no. It's Deadpool
No.
meta, if anything. like, like I haven't seen so much Deadpool. Oh my god.
He is definitely everywhere. It's pretty cool. Oh, weird. Oh, pop out chat. There it is. Yay, pop out chat. Go away.
It's telling me my bitrate is terrible right now. Oh yeah. Hey Joey. It says we're unstable. Average stream bitrate too high. I might need to adjust my bitrate.
Well, it's probably got the settings that I put in it. I would bet.
Maybe. No, it looks fine now. Okay, it just needed to calm down. It just needed to calm down for a minute. Joey, how's the stream quality? Say we got good stream quality, so I'm gonna run with it and say we're fine. We'll just wait for a couple people to get in here, and then we'll get started with this.
Cool. Did you get rid of the announcement section? Or am I just blind?
I guess we did.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't remember getting rid of it, but I guess we did. I guess because most of the time we do be your best self anyways when we make an announcement, so.
Yeah. Go drop my weekly self-promotion post and the official Discord.
That's the spirit. I really hate how fuzzy my camera is. I really don't know why it is. It's so annoying.
I just figured, like, you're in the witness protection program now that you're living in the RV. That's
Fair.
just hiding your identity.
I guess that's what it is here. I have this fancy unicorn drink for Deadpool.
Ooh, that is fancy. I have a really crazy fancy sour beer, and I have all the fixins to make this thing that I only know them as a Mexican ashtray, but it's
That's
basically
in it, I'm assuming.
no, it does not. It's a really terrible beer. It's Tecate.
Okay.
With just some like hot sauce on top, and you squeeze a lime into it, and then you do a drizzle of like salt and pepper. Yeah. And it looks terrible. Tastes great.
Can you stream through GoPro? You can. I just don't have my GoPro set up. I also have a DSLR that I could set up, but that's way too much work. I don't really feel like setting up a DSLR on my desk.
Do you have the video recording off?
What?
Is the video portion of the recording? Do you have that off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I always turn that off. Yeah, you can stream through GoPro. You can use like a webcam. You just hook it up and then you select that as your source, and you can stream through it. And typically they're good. But I've never had an issue with my webcams. I have like 1080p webcams. Yeah, like if I really wanted to, I just set the DSLR and could do that. But that's a lot of work, and I don't really feel like doing that. Oh man, I'm excited though. Maybe we can come to a conclusion on like actually like how you pick crises now.
Oh, disabling hardware acceleration.
What's that?
It's a Chrome setting I might need to change.
That might be what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Menu settings. System. Oh, weird. I'm actually running it through.
Here with another.
Okay. Well, I turned off my hardware acceleration. Maybe that'll do something.
Did it do it?
I mean, I wouldn't know. I won't know until we try to make me do the stream again.
Oh, that's fair.
But you are super blurry, so if you want me to do that.
I mean, am I blurry on the stream?
Let me look.
I'm pretty sure I'm just blurry in general. Like, it's just the way it is. I'm just blurry. Was I not blurry when I wasn't doing the stream?
You were not. You're not blurry on the stream, though.
Okay.
Yeah, you look good.
I mean, it's up to you. We already got 6.
No, let's do it. You look fine. The stream looks fine.
Let's just run with it.
Stream looks fine.
All
Everything's going.
Everything's.
Let's just make it happen.
We're just technically inept over here. Like,
yeah. I'm just glad to be like down on my responsibilities count tonight. Like I'm just all I had to do was show up again. That's like
fair. You miss it.
My favorite.
I miss just having to show up. All right. Well, let's get this show on the road then.
All right.
All right. I'm hitting the buttons. Hit that one. Okay.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Maximum effort. In this war, there's no surrender. He's out of line, but he's right. Who the hell is Bucky?
You don't like a fair fight.
I think you're wrong. Which part? All of it.
Think you're the only superhero in the world?
Touché.
Welcome to Rogue Agents, a podcast about stuff and idiots who can't technology right. We are your hosts, Dyzard and Finger Guns, aka Sammy Two Pews. Sammy Two Pews. How you doing tonight?
I'm killing it. I'm tired tonight. I'm super tired tonight. I had a great long weekend. Not long. Like the weekend felt long, right? So it was one of those. So that was good. But I've been channeling my my dad energy. I was falling asleep on the couch right before we started doing this.
Beautiful. Yep. We've been looking at little videos, like little basically puppy chihuahuas, and there was one of the big old belly, and it's just like this. I just passed out, and I'm like,
Yeah,
that's me when I'm
pretty
watching
much
TV.
Are you guys? Do you just watch Chihuahua videos for fun, or are you in the market for?
No, we have.
Are you adding to the fleet?
we got 2 chihuahuas. I guess some sad news. We had our female had a litter, but only one of them made it. So that happened Friday. So real rough weekend.
That's super sad.
Yeah, but it is what it is. We got one. We're gonna end up keeping her because but they're doing good though. She's mama puppy, whatever. Her name's Belle, the mom, and she's doing good, and the puppy seems to be doing just fine. So at least we have that. But other than that, we I've just been grinding out games left and right and trying to X-Force, and with a splash of Midnight Suns on the side here and there to change things up. And still haven't painted since Nova because I'm bad, and been working on figuring out what we want to do to revamp certain things. And I guess a little behind the scenes for those who would like to know, we are looking at revamping Accountability Club, revamping Challenge of the Quarter. Ooh. And a bunch of other
Bingo,
stuff.
baby.
Bingo. A bunch of other stuff we're looking at trying to alter to bring back some fun interactability with the cast and the listeners. So that'll be coming out. We're still working on it. Nothing really to put out yet other than that. Tonight I am drinking a Hazy Days IPA by Legend Brewing Company. It's got a picture of a unicorn on it, and I thought it was perfect. Sam has his typical...
So it's a Deadpool show tonight.
It's a Deadpool show.
Am I rushing tonight?
What have you been playing? We've been talking off.
I've been struggling to wrap my head around how to play X-Men Blue, just because it's basically a brand new affiliation with brand new characters. And I have not cracked the code yet. I think that it's got a lot of... It really opens up the X-Men toolbox, I would say. And knowing when to use which tool, both like at the turn 0 level and then across the turns of the game, is something that I have not fully grokked yet. And so it's been... I'm on a learning streak.
Fair enough.
With the old X-Men Blue right now. But I mean, I'm also maybe forcing them into every game and playing with a very aggressive strategy, trying to see, like how much value I can get from Scott's leadership. Mm-hmm. And that means I'm rolling a lot of dice, which is one of the most, butt clenching things you can do in Marvel Crisis Protocol. Is just like roll these dice and see what happens. Because I'm not running with any mods yet. I think I'm going to maybe need some. At least to kick them while they're down.
How are you feeling about Scott's leadership? It's been a couple weeks. Yeah, a couple weeks since the mini.
It's very neat. It has the same... I'm running into the same problem that I always run into with like on damage triggers, which is that if you need the on damage trigger, you're not going to get it. I'm gonna roll 2. You're gonna block 2, and then I'm not going to get my extra power. Nor am I going to get the power on my character from dealing damage. So it's not obviously, like every time and things like that, but it is definitely one of those things where it's like, well, all right, if I get this power, then I think I'm pretty much set up, and then I don't get it. That's like, well, back to the drawing board then.
Let's start over.
I'm also like been playing them like incredibly aggressively, like going down on points early, trying to force more of an attrition approach, and I don't think that's correct for what that's worth.
That's completely fair.
They've got some hitters. There are affiliated hitters all over that team, but because it's more of a toolbox, you don't necessarily bring 3 hammers to an individual match. I think more often than not.
3 hammers at all anyways, because hammers is a bad scenario to be bringing. Let's go ahead and use that to start talking about some scenarios going on, So I guess like our main topic we want to talk about is figuring out crises in a new world of MCP, I guess. And it's very much...
Absolutely.
Like, where do you want to start with this one? There's a lot to go over here.
Well, what do you pick, right? Because it used to be before this last batch of updates. There are a lot of things that seemed pretty obvious, at least in my mind. I almost have more problems now trying to choose what I want to bring for my crises than I did after the Crisis update. Because with the Crisis update, you're just like, okay, just scratch everything, back to the drawing board. What's good, what's bad? Let's figure these out. And trying to understand like how the actual crises work for me is something that my MCP boomer levels of knowledge of the game, where it's like I've been playing long enough that I understand how a lot of the characters work. I've played a lot of the setups before. When the characters change, when we get this many like brand new characters, and if you figure that it's like this batch in the revision, and then it's also the core 2 characters, like there's a lot of new happening in the game right now. So it feels very fresh to me, and I'm kind of back to square one when it comes to like what crisis do I want to play, which is also like what I want to play is usually where I start. Right, that's like the first, like step 1 for me on the what crisis am I going to play with this squad? Like, what do I want to play on? What crises do I actually want to play? which I think is, I have no idea right now.
Fair. All right, so I have a question for you then. What do you think gives you, I guess, where is the most agency as a player that you have on the crises for that game?
It's in your roster construction phase. That's when
Is
you
it
have the most
Okay.
agencies so far as crisis construction.
I disagree. I actually disagree here.
Okay.
Because I could have 6 crises in my list, right? And only one of those is going to get played in a game. Now,
yeah, I agree with you
who decides on which side of your secures or extracts? That's going to be priority player. So arguably, priority player having priority is what's for the biggest agency on the crises for that game.
Okay, I mean, I see what you're saying there. I don't disagree with you. I guess the reason, just to defend my hill a little bit, is that it's during the roster construction time frame, the pre-turn 0, where you're getting to select 6 crises, and you get to like select each of those things for or with reasons. And so I'm saying that like your agency is during that moment where you're narrowing down the field of like 20 something. 22?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 extracts. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 secures.
22.
So, yeah, 10 and 12.
Okay, so you're narrowing down 10 and 12 to 3 each,
but
which I think
reality,
is there's a lot of agency in that. Oh, you're also correct.
But in all reality, you're really narrowing from 22 to 1, and that 1 is decided by the player with priority.
I don't completely agree with you there, but I'll let you. I'll feed you some rope and see where this goes.
All right, so let's just focus on extracts first. If I pick out of my what was it 10 extracts, now I have 3 extracts. If my opponent has prio and they like my extracts, then only one of my extracts get chosen and none of my secures.
Well, why would they like your extracts? Because I agree, that's definitely the way that I approach the turn 0 point. If I win the priority roll, what do you run for your what are your reds and your blues, right? What are your secures? What are your extracts? I'm going to look at those and I'm going to decide which one of your 3 groups, which one of your groups of 3 I feel more comfortable on than the others, or which one of my 6, my 3 and 3, do I feel like you're going to struggle on or present a bigger problem for you? So there's definitely a tremendous amount of agency at that point. But I think that you should have brought crises to the match that you're comfortable with.
So
they should all be things
like you shouldn't be playing stuff that like you've never played and you're just bad on. That's a terrible idea.
You don't bring deadly meteors in your kingpin only squad. Like, don't do that.
Like that's
just don't do it.
But where I'm trying to say is, if I have 10 extracts and my opponent's going to limit it down to 1, or if I have, again, like it's really 22 down to 1 because you only get 1 secure or 1 extract. So really, in all reality, it's 22 down to 1, and that is decided by your whoever has priority. Either you have priority and you're like, I want my secures and not this. Where this is all ultimately leading to is like hammers is probably the best example. Everybody who talks about hammers is, man, if I have hammers with priority, well, the only way you're not going to have hammers, the only way you're going to have hammers with priority is if you take your opponent's hammers. You're never going to have priority on your own hammer because then your opponent just gave you probably a 70-30 chance of winning. And they just didn't see the chance. They just didn't see they're either a newer player. They didn't see the fact that you have really good hammer game, all that type of stuff. So where I'm leading with all of this is this.
Go
ahead.
You're disregarding the I win priority, and I love hammers with prio so much that I pick my extracts play.
But then you're giving up a lot.
I don't care. I don't care what you have, because my hammers game is so strong, or my senator's game is so strong, or my extract game is so strong that I just pick my extracts, unless it's like one of the handful of actual speed bump secures that you have.
But that's now you're
that's
but now
gonna be
you're
bad for
throwing
me, so I
in
don't want
you're
that.
throwing in different variabilities. So why not we just look
Always.
at but like why not we just look at what is the most I guess like variable I can't think of the word I'm thinking of. Like basically like excluding variabilities, the most well-rounded crises list that I could take for my list specifically. I think that is arguably the better way to look at your crisis selection instead of trying to hedge your bets. Because if you hedge your bets, you're going to hedge your bet in the wrong place, and the house always wins.
Maybe.
It's true though. Like I'm very much of this opinion right now that I love hammers. I love hammers in my X-Force team. I have good play on hammers. I have a good plan for hammers. I don't bring hammers because I've never had an opponent say, let's play your extracts. And more often than not, if I have priority, I would rather play my opponent's extracts because they're taking hammers. They're taking Kree core. They're taking XYZ. And I'd rather put them on an uncomfortable secure, like, let's say, scoundrels, to where I'm able to leverage, one, I have priority. I could have a 33% chance of getting hammers, and now I'm going to put them on an uncomfortable secure on top of that. I honestly truly think, and I've kind of always thought this, like, secures are keen. They're dictating where your match is being set up, where your fights are going to happen. Sure, extracts do it, but even when you play Gamma, you go out, get an extract, come back to Gamma. You're playing Scoundrels. It dictates your movements on where you're going. Secures pretty much almost always, I won't be like they do because they don't always dictate your positioning on the board. So I would rather control where my opponent's going to be going for like the long term than their round one plays, because that's what a round one play is. A round one play. It's not going to be there the rest of the game. So
I don't think that we live in a world where everyone needs to like shudder and shake in fear from an ASM or an Angela like turn one grab on a center line. No. I also agree with you in that, like, one of the major reasons I didn't run hammers for a really long time. I'm back on it right now in the Black Order list anyway, because I do like some of the effects that it has on the game. But I do not run on Tessie because of how bad I hate that without priority. I never ever want to put that out there without priority.
That's my same reason for me not wanting to run hammers. Hammers is so swayed in favor of whoever has priority, because almost everybody has a game plan for hammers because of how good hammers is and how everybody's good at hammers.
Sure.
I think Black Order is a little bit different. I think they're an outlier here because Black Order do Black Order things. So I don't really know how to do that. But like, I think generally speaking, the majority of affiliations are arguably shouldn't be breeding hammers, because you're going to end up playing on it without priority. Your opponent's going to get that leg up on you. You're going to run into Sam and he's going to say, oh, I have hammers and you have hammers. Okay, easy day. Yeah. I definitely think that it's like one of those situations where when I look at what I'm breeding for my extracts and my secures, I'm not anymore looking at like, okay, what's my priority play? I'm looking at like, what is my play? I don't care if I have priority or non-priority. It's what do I have to play this? Am I playing eyes? Okay, I'm not playing eyes. Do I have a grunt? Okay, I'm playing a grunt. What do I do for counter centerline grabs? What do I do for this? And instead of looking at it so singularity, because all I ever see anybody talk about is, I have a really good X priority play. I have a really good, like, I'm great on this on priority. Okay, well, we've talked about this before too. Like, what is your non-priority play? And I've been doing more.
Yeah, what do you do when you get punched in the mouth?
Cry. Cable shielded me, okay? My teeth are fine. But and when it comes down to your crisis selection, I think what people should be looking to isn't necessarily like, maybe even I'm good at this with prio, so maybe I don't actually want it because it's a very popular scenario, and I could bring something else that I'm good whether I have prio or I don't have prio. I would much rather bring I'd rather bring like a 60-40 split on both prio non-prio than a 75-25 if I have prio and a 40-60 if I don't have prio. Like, even out your odds by doing that with your crisis selection on, I know I have game whether I have prio or don't have prio on these scenarios, instead of focusing on that. If I have prio, I just win this game, because you're gonna lose maybe half of those games when you don't have prio.
Maybe.
I'm trying to help you, Sam.
What are you trying to help me? You're trying to help me with my crisis dilemma?
Yes.
I think that this takes experience and reps. I think that crisis selection is one of the, if not the hardest aspects of playing objectively correct Marvel Crisis Protocol. That understanding both what the team, the roster that you made, like what does that actually function best on, is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that is largely experience based. It's based on you as a player, your level of experience, you as a player, your tastes and preferences, the things that you'll choose to do in a given moment. And I think the third element is pushing things on other people that they're not going to have advantaged game plans.
I want to go back to your second point here.
Okay.
And I'm spacing on how you worded it. Can you rephrase what you said again? That way it's fresh.
That it's your predilections as a player, the things that you're going to choose to do as you're playing the game.
So my point with this is MCP has such a wide roster of characters now that we can't sit here and say Black Order is just absolutely terrible on X, because now you could, like, if you're going to a competitive event,
bad example.
It really is. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, what I'm trying to say though is, like, if you're a competitive player, you're tuning your list to make it to where you're at least decent, and you're going to put up a fight on every single scenario. So
Correct.
You can't really go with that line of thinking of, well, I'm going to take this because I have a 60-40 into 90% of the field. I'd rather do something that I'm like, everybody's just bad at this, because if I play this enough and I work in something, and typically, like let's think of, I think Senators is like the biggest example I have right now.
Okay.
Previously speaking, nobody played Senators because they were afraid of the Mystique Deception play, or Thanos cosmic portaling the world. All these different things that are much more limited than they used to be. So Senators is very much high on my radar of being just a really good scenario that people should be really playing right now, and arguably be practicing, because it's going to be more and more as people realize that if I just have reps with Senators and my opponent doesn't, I usually just win Senators.
I mean, again, I would just harp on there's a lot of experience at play here.
Yeah.
That playing those reps, right? So, like, you don't need to bring only, these 3 crises that you feel super advantaged on because you have amazing turn 1 plays, or, you have Kingpin, and so you have great secure game. Like, okay, great. But playing the game, getting reps, playing on stuff, knowing what your approach is on a given crisis, on a given crisis pairing, all that stuff comes with, like, that's the reps. You're getting that from playing the game.
Okay. Well, I guess
you don't just like stumble into Senators one day and be like, "Oh, look at that! I'm amazing at this."
Dude, like absolutely, like you figure it out. The thing is, though, like what I'm asking Sam for you to do is stop grabbing that low hanging fruit and look at it deeper than that. Like right now, you're grabbing that low hanging fruit of like reps. Well, like, let's look more into like the theory of it and less of what's face value. Because face value is, yes, reps are king. Reps will always be king.
Okay.
I'm very much becoming of this mindset that, yes, reps are important, but making people uncomfortable is more important.
Making people uncomfortable is huge.
People
that was the entirety of the approach last year. That was like,
and I'm back on it 100%.
The low thread, like, just make you uncomfortable.
Like I am on meteors, intrusions, which is that's kind of a neutral scenario, and scoundrels, and then I have Senators, paranoia, and virus. So I have like one on both sides that's very, very neutral, and then like the other two are very like, oh god, I don't want to play that. Like, and every time I play somebody, it's like, I don't want either of yours. Like, these are terrible. Like, and that's what I want to hear. Like, I want to hear my opponent
Absolutely.
on Crisis Selection be like, I don't want to play either of your secures or your. Like, I have a 1 in 3 chance on both sides to get something that's at least neutral.
Mhm.
And I definitely think this has been a line again. Like, we tried it last year, and I think it was just like, I just think that the big boys just overran what we were trying to do. But I'm trying it again, and it's working great. And it's more of, what is the field bad into? What is like the meta bad into on scenarios? If I get reps on these and make my team good at these, then I instantly have an advantage on at least half of the objectives on the board. And it's been working. It's been working really well. And I think the biggest thing when you're looking at like, why do I choose a Crises? I think something that people need to start leaning towards is stop looking at those round 1 plays. It's good to know your round 1 plays. It's good to know your opponent's round 1 plays. But I'm starting to think, like, this is like honest. Like, I think they're a trap. Round 1 plays don't always win you the game. If don't win you the game ever, it's what happens after the round 1 play. So the round 1 play sets you up. It's like T-ball, right? You have the ball. It's set up. It's ready to hit. It's right there in front of you. That low-hanging fruit. It's all ready to go. You hit the ball, you grab that secure, you grab that extract, you're ready to go. Well, now what do? So people just focus on round 1 plays. You could hit the ball all day, and like, what if the string on the little T-ball got cut? What are you gonna do? The ball's gone.
I would push back on you just a little bit, at least on your secures.
Stop.
You're very advantaged on all of your secures, for what that's worth. You've got a built-in cover negation on basically your entire team because of the leadership. You have been talking for months about how good X-Force is at meteors for various reasons. So you definitely got that. And intrusions is just money in the bank for anybody. I know that one of the X-Force shows you did, you talked about how you didn't like how people could come in and like dive on you from intrusions. And that's uncomfortable, but I mean, you've got enough range, and I think that intrusions is great. I'll take the dive because it means they're not scoring points. Like they're bringing, if they're jumping through there, they're dropping objectives. Yeah.
So
that feels good.
This is Sam. This is like part 10 of my 30-step crisis selection process. So I guess I should clarify. I'm more talking about extracts because when I'm thinking about this whole, I think definitely needed to clarify that extracts are where you're trying to make your opponent uncomfortable. You want them to pick your secures because secures are easier to evaluate how your opponent's going to do on them because they're not moving. They're not, I guess, Fisk moves, but like they're not moving. You know how they're going to impact the game. You know that if I play XYZ on Scoundrels, I generally know what that opponent is going to do on that. 1, because of reps. 2, because like there's only so much you could do on secures.
Yeah, it sets the battlefield, right? Like that's where people are going to stand around and wait to die.
So I think secures are super easy to figure out just because it's like, that is where you pick, this is where I'm best at, because prio or non-prio doesn't really matter for secures, in my honest opinion. It really doesn't matter. You're going to go where you're going to go, and you're going to stand where you're going to stand. The only thing that really matters is, do I have the dice to roll pay to flips if I'm bringing pay to flips?
So, yes, I think that the player who loses priority the player who doesn't have priority, right? Whoever's acting last in the round has a slight advantage on secures. But that's worth.
Okay, no, I agree with that. Just because they could like be like, oh, if I just go put a body over here, I'm either robbing you a point or I'm stopping, and we can go parity. Absolutely,
right. Or you've got control pieces that you save till the end. But
my point here is, I strongly think that secures are easier because of like how they act in the game. It's easier to be like, I want this, this, and this. I'm gonna take the ones that I'm best at. Because if my opponent gives me my secures and they take their extracts, then I know I probably have at least a quarter to half of the points on the table, which means it's way easier to keep parity. So there's that. But back to extracts. Extracts is where it gets hard because it's very much These are moving. These are very much what my opponent does is going to impact it. And this is where like the whole round one plays. I think people need to stop focusing on round one plays because, again, does the round one play actually win you the game?
The game is too long for a round one play to just straight up win you the game. You've got to make other good decisions on the table. It can secure you a lead that you can maintain for the rest of the game, depending on like what that looks like. Like a great example for this is like an Infinity Hammers setup, right? Where you've got 4 and 4, and the distance between those two B columns is so far that you're basically, people have to take so much time to get from the left side to the right side to the left side. It's like they have to take a turn off, and that can like destroy the scoring in that game if they don't do it right, or they're gonna like try to assault the castle with not enough manpower. So that's the kind of thing where if you can create it, if you have an early lead on like a Hammers Infinity setup, you're up by 1 point, you can maintain that for the rest of the game.
Until somebody
like,
dumps the hammers, and then all of a sudden it swaps.
Oh yeah, and that's where I'm not suggesting that you put 3 hammers on Hulk and like get him in the mix there. I'm saying like if you spread out the hammers, right, and you were able to claim an extra secure point for whatever reason, you brought an extra body, you did something else, in some way you were able to get parity on hammers and then claim 3 on the Infinity formula. If you can do that and then not risk your hammers, basically make them come into you, have enough ranged attacks, be shield, do something else where you've got, more options for disrupting your opponent's attacks, and you can hold on to a lead like that. I think that you can get a lead in turn 1 and hold on to it for the rest of the game. I don't think that you should walk into every single game with priority going, all I have to do is grab an early lead and then lean into that for the rest of the game. I've played enough Asgard and X-Men to know that that just doesn't happen. The model that should have stayed melts. The model that, someone dies, the hammer gets dropped, you got a 3 stack of hammers on somebody, and that model goes down expectedly or unexpectedly, and then those hammers are on the other side of the board, and you can't do anything about it. The game's over. Yeah. So there's lots of ways for that plan to go wrong. There are also the occasional game where you can get an early lead and milk it all the way through 16 points.
Sure. But that's not reliable. It's not consistent.
No,
what is consistent though is developing a shape plan versus a crisis plan.
Sure.
So it's like if I have an F, I know that I'm going to do this, this, and this. I need to go this way with this character, this way with this character. We talked about this back when we were doing the Crisis deep dives, where it's like we have these quadrants. Do I want to do a quadrant control type of setup where I'm basically going to go up here, feint hard on the secure, and I just grab that extract and run away? Or do I try to dominate my half of the board and keep parity on one? And that very much comes down to reps. But I think extracts are the hard spot right now. When I was revisiting X-Force for the changes and everything, I pretty much had my secures locked in like within the first couple of games. Like I've gone through and I've shifted them, but I always went back to no, I want these. No, I want these. And just like these feel good. Because they're the constant. They're very much that constant. My extracts, I've shuffled every single extract through there, and then finally ended up at I like this. I like Senators because there's 6 points on the board. That seems scary in like old X-Force. Like, oh my god, this sounds terrible. And I actually kind of wish I used to play Senators, right? Because the thing about Senators is my opponent can grab 3, I can grab 3. Where it gets fishy is if they have someone who's tanky as shit and can double move and grab a Senator and then just sit there in front of you and being like, I have your Senator now. What are you going to do? And that is where Senators gets to be like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting. Because you can absolutely just be like, okay, I got your toy. What are you going to do about it? And let's just say Bill, for instance, where Bill is ever present right now, and probably always will be. Like, he moves up. There's very few characters who are going to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to get rid of Bill. Like, they're going to have to put so much resources into Bill which then means that they're going to fall behind on secures because they're doing attack actions on Bill, who's right in front of them.
Yeah.
And it just screws the whole entire math of your scoring that you're typically used to. This is why I like Senators, is because it screws up your action economy because you can only move action once. You have the super easy availability to go and steal one of your opponent's Senators and then screw up what they're doing on their game. And 3, nobody really knows what to do on Senators right now. Like, it's super fun because I'm just like, I'm going to go over here, and my opponent's like, man, I haven't played Senators in probably a year. And I'm like, that's what I thought. I'm just a bully now. We keep saying it, but I really am. But when we talk about like what I'm looking for in extracts, it's how do I not necessarily round 1 plays, but what are my closing plays? Am I able to run away with this? Senators? No. But I'm playing a team that doesn't really want to run away. I'm playing a team that wants to be in the fight, a team that wants to do this.
Right.
So what you should be looking at is, what does my team want? Do I want to run away? Well, maybe I look at Crisi then, because now I have a extract that once I hit that critical mass of if I run away, I'm good, then you do it. Versus Senators, you can't run away with Senators. You want to be a team that's going to be able to stick through it and be able to fight that game out. Crisi, I'd argue, is one that I can run away with. Cubes is another one that arguably you can run away with. You can very easily run away with cubes because of the fact that somebody gets dazed, you take 2 of the cubes and just run. And then all of a sudden, now your opponent has to hope that they have enough action economy to get where you're at to make you lose your basically steam engine that just started. So when we look at this, we got to look at, what is my team wanting to do? Are they wanting to stand and fight? Are they wanting to be mobile? Are they wanting to run? And that is more what influences my extract decision over what's my round 1 play on this. What's my team look like if I have prio? I don't care about prio, and that's probably the best feeling when I'm looking at my extracts. I can play all of my extracts and not have prio, or have prio and still be fine. And once you get to that, I think that's when you're like, okay, my extracts are set.
I think some of that's a feature of what you're playing too. Like, I love that with the update to the game, the update to some of the X-Force pieces, that they did not change that like core dynamic of what X-Force has like always been. Where it's like
I want to
priorities
counter that real quick.
Has like never been an issue. Okay.
I want to counter what you said right there because of your talk of, okay, well, let's take this and let's build 3 rosters and not have any overlap. I did that with Suns. I'm working on a Suns roster, and I have it at a point where I feel the exact same way about Suns, and Suns are very, very different than X-Force. I'm taking Crisi, I'm taking Cubes, and I'm taking... I forget my third one. But basically, they're my example of I can't really sit in a fight with Suns. Like, they kind of just fall over if they're against the wrong team. So they would rather...
Sure, but you also have 2 steals in the roster. Like just affiliated.
But then this very much goes into this line of thinking of, what is my team actively doing? I need to appeal my extracts towards that end game. Not the early game. I want to appeal to the end game. Do I have steals? Cool. I want an extract that I can actually steal. I want an extract that I can get away with easy. If I can't get away with Senators, I'm not taking Senators. I'm taking something like Crisi or Paranoia, something like that. Something that I can actually take and run away with because my team has that availability to me. So when you're looking at your extracts, it's very much, how do I win this game? For me with Suns, it's I'm going to find a spot where I hit critical mass and I'm just going to start running away.
Yeah. And you have tools for that.
Yeah. X-Force is I'm going to tarp hit my opponent and beat the crap out of them and force them to be kind of in this position to where they can't run away.
And that sounds like the very definition of playing on Senators to me. Like, that's exactly what Senators is supposed to be as a scenario.
I love Senators right now, man. What do you think about that line of thought? Instead of looking at the early game, look at your end game. How do you close with your team specifically?
You know, I think my opinion on in-game states and MCP is that there's just so damn many of them that you can't really prepare for that. because you could base, like, so Black Order has a lot of quote unquote end games where you switch out of kill mode and go into a control mode.
Sure.
Not as effective with the once per turn cosmic portal, but I mean, by and large, it's still the effect on the game, right? So like that's still a massive effect on the game.
Okay, yes.
That's an end game strategy. You lose Thanos halfway through that game, you don't have an end game strategy. You have to come up with a different one, either on the fly or you've done it enough.
You also have the way to adapt. If you lose Thanos, well, what do? Well, I have a 2-point lead. We're playing cubes. I'm gonna scoop as many cubes as I can and spread to the winds, and then good luck. Like, you can't kill me. I'm Corvus on full health with the reality gem. You're not getting.
He's a lot easier to take down when he's holding 3 cubes.
I mean, fair.
But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
so, but like, I think it's very much, what is your primary plan for these extracts? Like, what does your team primarily want to do? If you're playing a team, arguably you should know like what your overall end game looks like, your primary end game. Yes, you may have multiple options, and if anything, that makes you better if you have multiple options. Sure, I can go and I can control stuff, or I can kill stuff, or I can do this as Black Order.
Sure.
Knowing all those options gives you a leg up, because maybe your opponent doesn't know you have a third option on top of the first two. And it's up to you as the player to find out when to pull the trigger on when to shift. And that's the hard part too, is knowing when to shift during the game.
Yeah, because you can't get too greedy too fast. Like, trying to close out the game in any direction, trying to close out too early is almost always going to result in failure, right? So either you ran away too soon, or you kept diving when you didn't have to, because you were trying to, like, I just got to take out this character. Well, if I can take out Wolverine, let's say, if I can just take him out, then I'll be good to go into the end game, right? So like, killing Wolverine is the start of your end game. Once he's off the table, you're like, okay, I'm in my end game now. My end game is just to run away with these points. And if you can't kill Wolverine, then your end game never has a chance to materialize. You have to find a different end game, or you're just going to lose, because you were right about Wolverine and he could just unwind your whole runaway strategy. Then whoopsie, that's not going to work. I agree with you that end games are better to focus on than early games. They're also a lot harder. Early games are really easy. You can say, I'm going to take this crisis, I'm going to do these things, and that's going to get me well into the mid game. While an end game and an end game strategy are all going to be things that you have to kind of formulate over the course of the early and mid game, even if you have a good idea of what your desired end game state is going into that. But I'm not saying like set up like a vision board or something, but you do kind of have to visualize the end game you want and strive to take those steps towards making that happen.
Yeah.
And running away is a valid end game strategy. I think that's something that we're not seeing a whole lot of right now, at least not in the games of Crisis Protocol that I've played for a while. It used to be a lot more. Running away was a valid early, mid, and late game strategy, where you just got the thing and then you hung out with it and scored the points. And I'm really glad that that's gone. But at the same time, there are games where you look at the board, you count your points, and you say, if I will move into the can't get attacked more before this game is over, I'm going to bank on not dying to that one attack that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's an end game. End games are also hard because it's like the entire game builds towards this like somewhat singular event, which is like the final round or rounds of the game. And you don't get that time back. You don't get... You have to get yourself to the end game point, right? To practice an end game. So either you set things up on a board, and it's always these like ridiculous like Kobayashi Maru kind of like situations where it's like it's unwinnable for one person and unlosable for the other. But or you can set up parity, but like those are all manufactured. you might wind up in a situation like that, but it's not the same. I'm all for focus practice, but even focus practice on Endgame is really hard. Endgame is just something that you have to play the game to that point and then understand where you're in the endgame now.
Yeah. So when we're looking at choosing your crises, I think I don't know if you, I guess to hit on secures, I think you kind of agree with me that secures are easier and it's more of where do I want to be and like how do I maintain this. So I don't really know if we need to hit secures too hard just because they're just that. And like extracts are definitely like the puzzle of like how do I know this is actually good for me. And what do you think of it being just as simple as like what does my end game look on these extracts, and how likely is it for me to get to that end game?
I think that those are all real solid thought practices. You know, like thought practice, right? Get yourself in the situation. Think about what this looks like. Think about the pairings that it goes with. So, I mean, I like to think of crises in combination and not just by themselves. So thinking about a game plan on Scoundrels is only one half of the game plan. And then I like to think about if I'm playing on Scoundrels, if I'm playing at 19, that means that I'm playing on Virus or I'm playing on Senators. And that's basically it. So I only have to think about 19 threat on Scoundrels in two different extract setups because we're never going to play on 14 Senators, right? Because that's gone. That's the old Crisis, not the new one. And there's a limited amount of combinations at threat value. And I think that understanding those and knowing like what your options are on your roster can help you get yourself into that kind of mental exercise of like what the whole flow of the game looks like on a given pairing. But I mean, that's a ton of effort. So I don't know. I do think that you want to look at what you think an end game looks like, right? So like, what does an end game look like for Senators? So for me, when I like visualize like what an end game looks like for Senators, most of the time it's like, well, there's a lot of Senators on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It really is. It's very much
like that's the end game I want.
When I look at Senators, it's one, am I playing against Inhumans? Because Terrigenesis is a bitch on Senators. Because it's like they just like have the target. It's like who do they want to go for? And Black Bolt just kills people like crazy now.
Yep.
But it's very much like it comes down to that. But I think it's better to look at the end game and try to like decipher what your possible end games could be than it is to hope your round one play pops off and carries you. I think it's much more reliable and much more consistent to plan for your mid to late game than to throw all your eggs in the basket on round one plays.
Do you think that there's any merit to solid round one plays? I mean, you mentioned on Senators that, you know, when somebody throws some giant kaiju and picks up one of your Senators as opposed to one of theirs, and now you've got this giant threatening thing that's just like, well, looks like Senators is going to go 4-2 this round. Like,
it depends on
how
when
does
they did
that?
It. So like, it all depends on when they did it. Like if they waited to do it until like later, and I only have like 2 people left to activate or 1 person left to activate, then there really is nothing I can do about it. I'm gonna be like, well, I guess I have to go and address this issue here, spread out more, and like go along this because there's no way I'm gonna take it out. But if they go and do it their very first activation, let's say their second player, and they just move across and take my Senator, I'm just going to throw everything I got into it because now I'm taking their big, heavy threat off the table early. Like,
yeah.
And
I agree with you there. Like, that's not something I think that, like, I don't think that it is a good or smart play to be that aggressive on Senators. I think that by and large, you're going to want to let that develop. Yeah. And it's not necessarily going to develop all that great, right? Because it's like, they're going to go pick up one of theirs, probably the one you're threatening.
Yeah.
You're going to go pick up one of yours.
What's
Go for
scarier
it.
to me on senators is Fury Grunts. They're by far scarier than, let's say, a Hulk coming and grabbing one of my senators. Because now they are essentially saying, I'm taking this senator out of reach for you unless you're going to come
Yeah.
after me, and I only gave you a character that doesn't matter because they're going to come back anyways.
Yeah.
So if you're playing senators, you're probably playing Fury Grunts or Shadowlands Daredevil because he more than likely doesn't die. Like there's a bunch of different plays you could do with it. But the reliability of it is very much like you're asking questions, which is more important than providing answers, in my honest opinion. If you could put your opponent into that think tank, ask the questions of what are you going to do now? I just sent a grunt to pick up your senator, and then you killed them. I dropped it closer to me, so now you're going to have to commit to my side of the board if you still want the senator.
Yeah. And committing to the other side of the board is a real scary place to be.
Yeah.
For like, not to like state the obvious too much, but like when you're putting a model that close to your opponent's resources, right? All of their bodies, all of their shots, everything that they want to do, that can go very badly very quickly. The earlier you do it in the round, the worse it's going to be. There used to be a lot more stranded in the center in this game than there is now, where you would just like, you didn't have safe grabs. You would do things where you would just like walk up and try to pick something up off the center line, and then that was all you got to do. And yeah, now you're going to stand there and hope you live. And you literally had to, like, if you did that too early, like you weren't. There was no way you were going to live. And if you could time that right, then you would get in this sweet spot where like you were going to get it, and then so long as you didn't have anything else on your team that was in like imminent danger, if you had priority, you could just walk away now. You're like, all right, I'm out. And it was a different kind of priority grab. It certainly wasn't just grabbing something from the middle and getting back to safety.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's a lot of merit in that. Like, there's a reason why I don't want to run Montesi, because if you give that to someone who has a safe centerline grab and they have priority, boom, it's gone. Now you have to solve for parity. You're no longer playing, Montesi demons. Now you're trying to figure out, well, how do I maintain the points to keep myself in this game? Because I certainly don't want to stand on these demon portals, because they make me worse at the game. But I've got to get that off of you. But I can't, dive. I can't just dive at you for this, single point. Just dive at your castle and watch what happens while you, sacrifice and bodyguard and eye in the sky and whatever else you have to basically blunt my approach. So I think that you can still do those kinds of things if you're built for it. I think the point that, correct me if I'm wrong here, the point that you're making is that like dumping too much into that sort of an approach isn't actually helping you in the long run.
Yeah, that's
a tournament
rare.
or
That's
your
where I'm
experience playing MCP.
Yeah, it's like,
I think that's perfectly fair.
yeah, and I think people focus too much on the round one plays. Like I started this out with, like, I see way too often, well, if I have prio on this scenario, I just win. Like, do you really? Like do you, like, why do you just win if you have prio here? I don't really understand that line of thinking. And I really would like that line of thinking to just stop, because it doesn't get anywhere. And then it turns into this whole group think where people are like, man, prio is what, like, what do I do with prio? What do I do with prio? Well, let's just say 50% of the time, at least, you're not going to have prio out on these scenarios. And you're almost more prepared looking at what's your non-prio plan than what's your prio plan. Like, how do I combat the centerline grab? How do I combat, like, how do I keep parity on extracts if I'm playing cubes and my opponent has prio? Like, you have all.
Would you say that building those kind of plays into your roster is something that you can control? So in some ways, it's since it seems to be the phrase of the episode, low-hanging fruit, if you will.
Sure.
That you're basically making choices in turn 0 to have options on the table with priority to, do a thing, have a safe grab, as an example. You can plan all of that out. Terrain allowing, like you can manufacture some crazy play, like far more often than not with priority. You can't plan those things out into the mid and end game. You can have an idea what you want the mid game to look like. You can have an idea what you want the end game to look like, but that's where it kind of comes back around to experience and reps and having a great strategy, having, good tactics on the table. Those things take more in-game action than these first turn plays. First turn plays are kind of, I don't want to say they're unique to MCP because they're not. They're in a lot of different games. They're just things that you have control over from the moment you decide to include Piece X and Crisis Y in your roster. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So if you don't have any of those things, do you think that you're at a disadvantage?
No.
Okay.
Because if you don't have any of those things, then what are you breeding? Because there was a while when I was looking at X-Force, I was like, I don't really want to bring Bill. I'm tired of playing Eyes on the Prize. I'm tired of doing all these sneaky grabs. And before I started throwing grunts in there, because I was playing Senators,
okay,
I was like, well, if I just have counter grab center line plays and basically work against what everybody else is doing, then I should be even better off than having a round one, turn one play, because I'm stopping the round one, turn one play. So whether I have priority or not, I'm able to stop, and then I can honestly, like, when you focus on the round one, turn one plays, you basically put blinders on to the rest of the game. You're just like, I'm going to do this round one, turn one, this is my play. When it's like, well, maybe I actually want to do this, and maybe my opponent makes a mistake by grabbing this now, and now I'm able to go and do this to them. Like, there's more to the game than just a round one, turn one play, is basically what I'm saying.
I definitely agree with that. I think I'm trying to establish a baseline value for where you value that. Because I do think that if all you do is just be like, you just don't have round one plays or anything, built into your rosters to be like, no, when I'm on this, like when I get this scenario pairing, this is what I want to do with these two characters. I'm going to try and force this. I think that you can't just replace it with nothing. You can't just be no.
That's what I was trying to say, is like, if I don't have the round one play, I have something else, and it's there for a reason. Like, I didn't bring Bill with Eyes because I'm bringing Mystique and Deception, and I'm going to pull your round one play. Or I'm bringing Fury and his grunts, and I'm going to work into this whole entire reposition game plan to where I'm going to grab 2 extracts now, even if I don't have prio. And then you're going to attack me, and then I'll reposition and get my stuff all on one side of the table to where you're not expecting it. And I don't need round one to do that. I could do that round 2. I could do that round 3. Or but turn 2 or turn 3.
Sure.
But like, more so focusing on progressing yourself to be able to reach that mid game / end state instead of focusing on round one. And I think that is the mistake people make. I keep saying it, is like, the mistake is there's so much focus on round one that people don't even prepare for mid to late. Like, I don't want to bring up Shatterpoint too much on this, but it's like, I think something that Shatterpoint has taught me is I prepare for the mid to late game more than I prepare for the early game. And doing that has been honestly like really, really good for my MCP games, to where if I'm preparing for the mid to late game, then honestly I'm 2 steps ahead of my opponent. Then they're just focused on what's happening right now. What's my round one play? I gotta grab this and grab this, and I'm like, that's fine. I'll be up on score in 3 rounds, and because I'm already positioned for this, I'm going to be able to stop this because I'm there before you expected me to be there, and I'm ahead of you in terms of positioning.
So there's definitely a mindset element to this, and it's not. I don't think it's even as surface level as this guy has a round one play and Dyzard doesn't. I think that the mind game, not like a mind game, but like it's like there is a level of mental preparation and approach to the game that is trying to dig in beyond just putting some pieces to execute a plan. That there's a lot more flexibility to it. Now, one major difference, right, is that in MCP, you've got agency. You can choose round one plays in MCP. You don't really have that option in Shatterpoint.
No, you're
because of the
forced
way
to play
that their
differently.
ordering system works.
Like you're literally forced into a different line of thinking, but arguably being forced into that line of thinking has opened up my line of thinking for MCP.
I mean, I think that whenever you play other games, it brings new things to light, right? Because like at the end of the day, whether you play one game exclusively or you dabble in a bazillion, or you play a couple of miniatures games, a couple of card games, and a couple of board games that you like a whole lot. You're like, however you're splitting your time when it comes to gaming, you're going to get a different spread of feedback, we'll call it, from the different games that you play. So far as just strategy is concerned, like you can like Risk and an army game, an army minis game, play completely differently. But at the same time, you're managing resources, or you're trying to capture key points for gain, right? So like at the same time, they're very different, but there's a lot of similarities. And I think that whenever you can learn something from a different game and apply it to the game that we're talking about, you learn from chess, you bring it to MCP. You learn from Shatterpoint, you bring it to MCP. You learn from Magic, you bring it to MCP. I don't know. I'm off topic now. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
That's fair.
But I mean, ideas from games are, like you can get different ideas from different games. You get feedback, you get validation from, choices that you make.
The main point I think you were trying to make was like you throw somebody off. Like let's say you're looking at my list and I don't have eyes on the prize. I don't have a typical round one, turn one game plan if I have prio, or even if I don't have prio, I don't have that game plan. And then all of a sudden my opponent's like, what is this guy trying to do? And then they go into a think tank of trying to predict what my game plan is without that card. And maybe they're just thinking that I'm some scrub and I have no idea what I'm doing because I'm not playing eyes on the prize. Which you don't need eyes on the prize to win MCP. I hate that line of thinking that I have to have eyes. I have to have eyes. You don't need eyes. You don't need an eyes carrier. You really don't.
I agree with you. You don't. I don't think it hurts you, right? And I think that, again, some of this is just the tools that you're given and the way that you like to play the game. And so if you play an affiliation that doesn't have an easy way, doesn't support you in having strong turn one plays, then like turn one plays probably aren't a great place for you to look, even though you can splash them in, right? You almost always need something affiliated to support you in your approach.
Okay. But that comes back to what I was saying earlier, is when you're looking at your crisis selection, primarily your extracts here, is what is my team doing? What am I vying for that mid to end game state? Once I figure out what my team wants for that, your extract selection is so much easier. So I think
it's a really important consideration for sure.
I think where the issue that a lot of players are having right now is they focus on this round one play, and then they don't look at the afterthought. So they start taking things like hammers. They start taking things like cubes. They start taking things like I don't know, like let's just say paranoia. I don't know what round one plays for paranoia. That's good. But like they start taking
so fast.
Yeah, but it's like you look at all this stuff. I guess like a grunt carrier is probably really good there. I don't really see how eyes helps you too much with paranoia. Not really. But like you have all these different scenarios, and then people start saying like, "Well, I have a round one play with this." It's like, okay, cool, you had a round one play, but what did that actually buy you? Other than you wasted a tactic card slot, and then you still lost that point anyways.
So wasting the tactics card slot seems strong to me. Like a lot of affiliations don't have great tactics cards. Fair. A lot of like you can build a hand of 5. Like you don't play all 5 of those every game. You play 3 to 4 in almost every game.
I just feel, I strongly feel that we need to stop focusing on the round one play and focus on the mid to late game. on what your team wants mid to late game, and let that influence your extract decision, not the other way around. Because I think people are in so much a mindset of what's my round one look like, and that's what influences their extract decision.
Counterpoint, right? Or devil's advocate, whatever you want to call this. What if my mid and end game, like what if my preferred mid and end game are being up on points by pushing very hard to take yours, right? So like, let's go back to some of like the old F dives, right? So we haven't seen an F dive in like 2 years of MCP time, which is like 3 months, right? So like nobody's done like any sort of F dive.
Like go grab the middle and then grab the back one.
Yeah, right. So it's not even, it's like you set up a safe grab on the center point. So if you've got a medium base long mover, right? And you've got a medium base medium mover or two and or a toad, right? So Asgard is a great example of this. They want, in my opinion, Asgard is at its strongest when it is trying to score out as quickly as possible. The game has nothing to do with attrition. You can attrition, but you're just rolling dice. So who knows what that looks like, right? Asgard wants to score as quickly as possible. My approach to that was to basically bring Angela when she fit, Lizard and Toad almost every time, Thor because I had to, and then whatever would fit, either instead of Angela or in addition to. And then I was going to set up Angela center so she could safe grab the middle point. She can also reach both back points.
All right. So just to save you,
Toad and Lizard on either side.
Just to save you some time. Okay. Your mid to end game state dictated that, not your round one. Your end game
absolutely
state,
no.
Okay. But that's that. But like what you're doing is you're proving my point. You're proving my point that
that's fine. I needed round one. I needed round one players to do that.
Yes. What I'm trying to say here. Point. But what I'm trying to say here, though, is like, stop focusing on the round one play. Focus on the mid to end where you want to be, and let that dictate your round one, not the other way around. Because if I
don't think anyone should walk up to the game or their opponent or their friends or their play group or anybody else and be like, all I got to do is win prio when I got this game. Like that's just not true. That's patently false, sir.
But the thing here is like you're saying that you're having an issue with your extracts. Okay, well, where does Black Order want to be mid to late game?
Well, no, Black Order is fine on extracts. I have no questions about that. I don't know what to do with X-Men Blue. I have no idea what crises I want to run for X-Men Blue.
So X-Men Blue, where do they want to be mid to late game? They want to be alive. That's one thing. They want to be able
I don't think I like D shapes very much for what that's worth with them.
But like when we look at like where they want to be in a position where they're like somewhat healthy, but you can't expect to be healthy. I would say somewhat healthy is a fair statement for where they could expect to be and where they want to be due to like healing factor characters and their defenses and all that. They want to be probably somewhat spread out and not so clustered together. But within a five bubble if you're playing Cyclops, more spread out if you're playing Storm.
Sure.
Because Storm Hop is less, you want to be clustered anymore. So you want to be spread out. So that immediately makes me think, okay, I don't really want anything that's a C or an E for Storm, but I do for Cyclops because now I'm forcing that range 5 bubble.
Yeah.
I don't want spiders or intrusion or spiders or cubes for Scott because he wants to be close. I think spiders and cubes is arguably good for Storm because at that point, like she doesn't really need to be close up together. Other people do. And like, so we're looking at all these scenes of where I want to be like position wise / health wise / attrition wise at that state of the game. I should expect Scott mid to late game to be either tied on attrition or above on attrition because I've had this excess power to come in to pay for more throws, to pay for more big attacks, to pay for boosted attacks, all this type of stuff. So I should expect Scott to be anywhere from tied on attrition or just ahead on attrition. Storm, I'm probably below attrition or just below tied. I expect her to be there and not ahead on attrition. So I want something. I'm not going to want cubes with Storm because now that's going to hurt me. And I don't want to lose extra life when I don't need to be losing extra life and I can't afford to be losing extra life. So now when I'm looking at Storm, I'm like, well, Virus is probably fine because I get spread out. The scenario doesn't really hurt me. It's a very neutral scenario. Cubes, I don't
It's a
care
little slow.
for. It's a little slow, sure, but it's manageable to where Storm could like have her team be able to have a decent like I can put up a fight and then I can run away when I need to.
Yeah.
Let's say.
Well, first of all, I think that the combination of leaders opens up X-Men
Yeah.
quite a lot. So
I agree.
Storm has been on the roster in the games that I've played with them, but I have not been like I'm not exploring
splitting.
that space. I'm trying to explore Scott, right? So it's like it's been a lot of what I call stress testing, where I'm just going to play this leadership and a selection of characters that I think are good with it. But I'm playing to understand what happens when, not playing to be like, all right, if I do X, Y, and Z, then I'm set up for the next step.
Yeah.
Then we go into phase 3, and
But I think it's easier to look at it and be like, where do I expect to be, and like give yourself a realistic, like a real check, not just be like, well, I want Storm to be ahead of on attrition, full healthy characters. Like, be realistic about it.
I'm gonna have it all. Everything is going to be coming up me.
And like, if you can come down to those determinations and be like, and like let that dictate your extract choices. Joey,
I think it's a good approach for what it's worth. I pushed you back on you quite a lot about this, but I think it's a good approach.
I think it's better than going, what's my turn one play? Like, if I don't have a turn one play, I'm not
absolutely
playing the scenario. I think that's bullshit, to be completely honest.
I mean, so I have not had that same encounter with like anyone that I am close to when it comes to MCP.
Do you peruse the fan server at all?
I go in the Black Order room and I tell people how to play Black Order.
Okay, but like, you don't jump around all the other chats and all that? Like, that's where you see. That's where you see
I will. I only
things.
bump into other chats when I'm trying to like easy mode into a starting point for like what I want to play.
I guess I'm being a little like, I haven't seen it so much lately as it used to be, but it very much was like, what's my round one play? What's your round one play? What is your prio round one play? You have this scenario. What are you doing? I don't care. I don't care what your round one play is. Everybody can do a round one play. What is your end game? What are you looking to accomplish by bringing this scenario? Well, I'm bringing senators because I want these scenarios to be on the ground. I want you to be stuck in place. I want you to be where I want you to be. That's why I'm bringing senators. Like, have a reason for why you're bringing that extract and have it make sense for what your team is and what you're bringing. I do want to jump
100%
over
with you on that.
I want to jump over to what Joey was talking about with what about threat value. I think nowadays is probably the best time to not really give a shit about threat value. I like, okay, that's a little
break that one
hyperbolic.
down for me.
Little hyperbolic, and a little bit of a hot fire take here, right? Everybody.
Now that you mention it.
But I truly feel this. I don't care what threat it is. I have a decent team to a really good team at every threat value because I have a 5, I have a couple 4s, I have a shit ton of 3s, and I have a 2. With that spread, I'm able to cover every threat value with what I want to cover. Now, yes, this is being very biased with my list and how it's built, but why can't you do that with your list? Yes, you have a 8 threat model and you have a 5 threat required model, but then like, you're not forced into, like, you could easily have 8, a 5, a couple 3s, a couple 4s, and then throw a 2 in for super vehicles.
It's about which pieces for me, for what that's worth. And I, for the most part, when I am building a Black Order roster, I am looking at it from the lens of shoring up the matches that I am well aware of are weak points, whether that's a crisis or an affiliation setup. And those are most of the pieces that I'm looking at bringing. And then the next step is to make sure that I can actually bring those pieces at the threat values that I expect to see in those matchups. So honestly, like, Black Order is the worst reference point for any
really
sort
is.
of,
They're so
because
unique.
it's just a completely
It's so
different
unique.
like
Well,
headspace.
let's look at X-Men though. Like X-Men, I think is
That's a good one.
Really, I think X-Men's a terrible example because they have such a good affiliation spread now that I can go
Yeah.
4, 3, 3, 3, 3, a 5 of whatever flavor I want, whether it be Cable Gene or a Splash 5. I have Badger I could throw in, or if I want a scoring carrot too, I can throw Bullseye
Yeah.
or Wanna easily. So like you can very easily have the spread of, and this is kind of where I'm headed at, where I think MCP kind of needs to go back to where people are building lists, is focus on your 3s, your 4s are tech slots, your 5 is your worker, and your 2 does something. Whatever unique task that 2 has. Akoya Bodyguard, Widow for points. Bullseye stands places and throws knives. Juan does everything because Juan's a beast. Badger kind of is annoying. So it's like, and Toad does extracts. So it's like you have these tech pieces. like when you really look at MCP, and I think this is where like the kaiju meta has really like warped MCP brain for everybody, is we've gone away from using these pieces as they're designed. We've gone into, I'm just going to throw this 7 threat model here or the 6 threat model here, and they're going to carry me, and the rest of my team composition don't mean shit because I'm able to rely on the back and ride the coattails of this centerpiece. Arguably, you can't do that so well anymore right now. The centerpieces aren't doing the same thing that they were doing, most of them. But like, what was MCP before we had kaijus? And it was, you had 3s as your workers, 4s were your tech slots, 5s were your like basically your big boy of the day. Like your 5 was like your powerhouse. Like this, I'm bringing in the big gun here. And then like 5+ is kind of in that territory. Your 2 is a unique, do a certain specific job. And like that was it. And I think we need to get our minds wrapped back around that concept of 3s are my workers, not my 6s and my 7s. Like 6s and 7s are not workers. They're not going around and flipping points. I mean, they do. But if I have more 3s, I can flip more points. I could grab more points. I can do all this stuff instead of being all my eggs in one basket. And I kind of don't really understand how we ended up getting to that point of having some 7 threat Malekith making that core concept of the game just not exist anymore. And not even able to fight that with those, because he would just, okay, well, I'm just going to kill all these 3s in one hit.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it was.
Yeah.
Because you would just lose the role player that you lose your role player, you would lose your workers, and they're just gone. They're gone forever. And the output on Malekith pre-changes was like through the roof. You do so much. It's incredible. I mean, dabbling around in Black Order again, even at Nova before the changes, nobody likes playing against anything that's going to remove your models and keep priority.
Yeah.
That is just not an enjoyable experience. And it is what it is. And I think that so far as, getting back to playing the scenario game, let's call it, right? So like the plan is, you bring these characters to do the work on the table and you assume that they're going to live through it. You have a much better chance of them living through it again. I think Hulk's the only one who's really, stands out as being an incredibly powerful piece. And, when you crunch the numbers on what Nightcrawler brings to the game and how quickly he's going to be able to chew through a model like a Hulk or, a Malekith or a Thanos or any of these larger models, I think that that's a really interesting, I don't want to call it a fix because I'm curious how it works out, right? I was around to hear how busted Ebony Maw was going to be before he got released and never quite panned out.
No.
So
really
we've definitely been wrong.
But
he's great.
But I think like my point here is like why I think threat value shouldn't matter as much as people make it matter is you have the tools to build your list to where you have a good team on every threat. But you're robbing yourself of that by not playing the tools you're given and falling into a groupthink.
Only counterpoint I would have for you on that is the power of priority. The priority is a very powerful mechanic in the game.
Sure. Just play
And,
CS.
and
Just play CS, then you're gonna steal it. It's fine.
I do have a Russian mob list that I really want to get on the table as
Honestly,
soon as possible.
CS actually personally kind of scares me right now because they can do this where they're running 3s as workers, they're running the 4 as a tech piece, they're running and they run all according to plan, and now they can run a wide list, and it's better than ever was before because now they're not to get their whole entire team one shot by a Malekith or
Right.
something else. Now I just have to worry about Logan. But like I have been doing this for basically since the reworks of being like, okay, I'm gonna go Cable, Deadpool, and then it's like Cable, Deadpool 23. Like that's my core. And then I throw a 4 in for a tech piece. I need somebody who's gonna help me on scenarios and have some attrition power. I take Psylocke. I'm on an E. I need somebody who's survivable. I'm taking Colossus. I'm on an E, but I need to kill more than survive. I'm taking Wolverine. So it's like I'm using my 4s as tech pieces, and I'm using my 3s as my almost, I don't want to say guaranteed, but like for lack of a better term, I want my 3s for my guaranteed output. And I think that's a fair statement. I think 3s are pretty much across the board, for the most part, a guaranteed output. You know what they're going to do. You know what they're going to accomplish. A 4, arguably, you can't really like say that I know this 4 is going to do this because a lot of 4s are very multifaceted where they can go left, right, or center. And like not in game terms, just in like just general direction terms of like, what am I going to do with this character this turn? Well, they're going to sit over here on a point and score it. Well, now this turn, they're going to go over here and kill 3 models. Okay, well, now this turn, they're going to go over here and do this. So my 4s have more options of what they're able to do, and I don't know what their overall output is going to be on the game. That's one of the biggest things I hated about OG Sabretooth for a while is some games he'd be great. Other games he'd just sit on a point and feel like he was doing nothing. So it's like that's like a 4.
My entire experience playing Weapon X. It wasn't even OG Sabretooth. It was Logan or Sabretooth. And it constantly just like, well,
but I think that's very much like
the 4th threat.
I think that's very much what happens with 4s a lot of times is people start jamming a lot of 4s and they expect the world of these 4s, and then they kind of just end up being lackluster, and you're like, well, I could have just brought 2 3s instead of a 4 and a 2 and feel like I got more accomplished with that. And a lot of times you're right, you could have and you should have. And that's where I'm pushing this agenda of let's go back to running 3s. Let's go back to like having teams that are like 5, 3, 3, 4. And that's a pretty good lineup. And then that'll help you feel better across the board on your threat values of let's look at my roster overall. Let's go 5, 3 4s. That's 4. Or even 4 4s if you really want. A bunch of 3s and then a 2. And now all of a sudden, if you look at your 4s like tech slots and not like, well, I got to have Bill because I need an eyes play. You say, well, what 4 do I need?
That's a tech slot.
It is. Okay.
To be fair, that is a tech slot. That is the definition of a tech slot.
To be fair, it is. But work with me here. If I look at this and I just immediately jump to Bill, I am locking myself out of, I don't know, let's say Psylocke. Let's say Colossus.
Hela, Loki. Yeah,
Hela, Loki.
There's tons of pieces out there.
Like
I agree.
Bill is great, and Bill does help win some games. But bringing Bill because he can do eyes, and then not bringing Hela, where Hela might have actually been better for you. Bringing Fury Jr. and Eye on the Sky, even though it's splash, you don't get it back. It's still a great card because it's anywhere on the board. 2 power escort to safety. Like it's nuts.
Okay. Before we move too far past it, if you're looking for an eyes play, I think that Hela's a better piece for you to bring.
Yes.
Period. She's going to have more of an impact over the course of the entire game after an eyes play than Bill is going to on the same play. When you do the eyes play, you ruin Bill's economy for the first, I would argue, 3 turns of the game.
Doesn't fuck with Hela.
Or he's getting heat from it, right? Where with Hela, you can just turret for the rest of the game from a safe position. You go up, you make your eyes play, you get back on a point that you can stand on and score 2 points for the rest of the game, so long as you're there. Until they dive onto your Hela, she's just going to score 2 points for you. And you're not asking her to do anything more than that because she doesn't have a throw. She doesn't have a size 4 throw like Bill does. She doesn't have damage reduction. She doesn't have all these things that Bill has that make him a much better frontline fighter, whereas Hell is just a straight up backline. And I think that if you're going to do an eyes play, you don't want that on your frontline fighter.
I
It's
think
the same reason why you don't want to put your extracts on your bodyguards. I see that stuff all the time too, where you're like, oh, okay, that was an interesting decision that you made there. Like,
so you're gonna
I thought
bodyguard
that
here
guy
or
was gonna
what?
try to- So like, now do you bodyguard this, or do you let it go through on the character that like doesn't score any points this turn? I don't know. Hella for Eyes and Plies.
No, I
And
100%
Bill
agree
for
with that.
everything else.
Yeah, Bill has a great throw. He survives, but like you said, it messes up his power economy. It messes up his like where he wants to be. Where it's like if I
Yep.
eyes with Bill, well now I'm gonna be pulling him back to a secure, and then now his round 2 is gonna be offset because he's not pushing the envelope. He's actually pulling
like,
back.
unless you're running him under new Zemo, his economy is ruined for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But like, what do you think about threat? Like, does threat dictate what crises you take?
The threat of the crises is like maybe the last consideration for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, does this put me in a really rough spot if I give up? If I put this threat value into the mix and then my opponent comes back and it's like, oh yeah, let's definitely do that. Threat value, I like that one. So I do think that it matters, but at the same time, I am looking at my team. So I agree with the general like loadout, right? Like you want to make sure that you've got a 3 or 4 3 threats, that you've got 2 to 3 4 threats, a 5, maybe a 6, and I like bringing a 2 threat.
Yeah, same.
I don't really like bringing 2, but there are interesting teams that you can make when you do bring two threats. So there's a place for it. What do you want your mid game and your end game to look like? And just understand that your 2 threat, at least one of your 2 threats, probably not going to be there, because that's how that works. But I want to be able to bring the characters that I am bringing to do a job at the threat value where I need them to do that job. And
Yeah.
so that's a huge part of it. So for me, I'm not so much looking at like, okay, paranoia is 16 threat. I don't want 16 threat. I'm going to look at my team and go, can I bring, like, what pieces do I need to succeed at paranoia?
Mhm.
Right? Like healing factor characters, or a grunt situation, or some other situation where I can manufacture not taking damage.
And this is another reason for why I think X-Force is way up higher on this affiliation tier list than even I'm giving it credit for, is because I'm a very firm believer that X-Force don't give a shit about what threat value it is. They don't give a shit about what shape it is. They don't give a shit about what crisis it is. They have an answer to help you on every single crisis. You heard it here.
Oh, I know very little about playing X-Force,
You should give it a
as
go.
I prove
It's
to
fun.
myself every single time I try.
Let me teach you the ways. Let me teach you the ways. Okay, so let's kind of see if we can put a little bow on this and make this last
Okay.
hour and a half actually concise instead of all over the place.
I'm in.
All right, so secures. I think we're both in agreement that secures are typically easy to find out for your affiliation. It's more along the lines of where do I want to be, and am I actually making impact with the secure?
With the caveat that I think that it also matters what you as a player want to play on, is also a factor for secures. And so like, don't bring like flip secures if you're playing Kingpin.
Yeah.
But if you like the Kingpin play style, like, get better secures. And if you like the flip secure play style, then like maybe Kingpin's not the right choice.
Yeah. I think that's pretty easy sum up for secures. Extracts.
Yeah.
Think about the end game. Think about the mid to end game of where you expect to be as far as attrition. Yeah, attrition's probably the big one, and placement on the table. And that should dictate or help dictate your crisis selection more so than what's my round 1 priority play.
You don't need a round 1 priority play.
No, you don't.
If you don't have one, you should still have a plan, either for it or to solve it. But you don't need to stock up on massive turn one stuff unless you literally need that to get yourself into the mid game and end game states that you want.
Yeah. So like if it's part of your plan to get there, then absolutely. If you don't need that to get to your mid game state that you're looking for, then you don't need it. Like that's the best way to put it. You got it there. Threat value. Let's go back to bringing threes in this game instead of everybody jamming a big boy in their roster, because not every list and not every game needs a big boy. And if you
not every game, not every list needs a big boy.
But I truly think though, if you go back to this, like there's probably some lists that still want a big boy. I'm not gonna say they don't, but
Yeah.
not every list does. Like I think running more threes gives me more game across the field of crises than bringing a big boy and being like, well, now I suck at 16. 15's a pain in the ass. I can't play 19 this scenario very well because I don't get this. So you're bringing that big boy a lot of times is actually what's screwing your roster selection for threat than helping it.
If you've got a big boy pet character that you want to push into every single roster that you play, go for it.
Yeah, sure.
You're giving up a lot to do that. So I think that a couple metrics that I use on this front are if you can hit 6 wide at 16, I think that's a very happy place to be in a wider roster. Hitting 6 wide at 15, you're making a lot of concessions. To hit 6 wide at 16, you basically need a 3-threat leader and be willing to run two threats on your roster. You've got 4 other slots remaining, like fill it up with some 4-threat role players or some hitters or a centerpiece, like go for it. But if you can create teams that can go 6 wide from 16, you're going to put yourself in a great spot to play scenario, pretty much period. Not every team can do that. Not every affiliation can do that. You're not going to want to do it every single game, but if you can build that stuff into your roster, you're probably going to be happy for it on the other side.
Yeah. I like
it opens up a lot on scenario games. And if nothing else, it will teach you what wider lists can do. Get the last bite at the apple.
Yeah. And I also implore you to just play every crisis in your list. I know not everybody has the time for that, but like if you played a crisis, you played 6 crises in your list one week and you're going to the game store the next week, don't play any of the same crisis. Like, explore and find what works for you. Stop the groupthink, because groupthink is what like led us to where we were 2 months ago.
That's fair. If you don't know what to play for crises, just bring whatever.
Yeah, and
because it's so hard. Or
it
like
is.
you know, pick 2 that you think are good and bring a third one. Another thing that you can do, I mean, go for it.
I was gonna say, or you could just neglect all life responsibilities and play nothing but MCP all day, and then really figure it out what your list wants. That is,
I mean, you will unlock the code then, right? Like
Yeah.
that. If that's an option for you, like that's probably a great choice for improving your MCP play. One of the mottos from some of the local guys that I hang out with, that played MCP with last year, was lose on Thursday to win on Saturday. I think that that's a great mindset to have. Like what you bring to the game store, winning games at the game store, like that's, don't get yourself validation from that. Like probably don't even get it from like tournament play. Like find something else in general. Play the game for fun. But lose on Thursday to win on Saturday. Try new things. Do the things that you're uncertain of, and try to, you know, figure new things out and get better at the game. And
Also,
to do that, you have to take risks.
I think lastly, the last thing you want to look at with crises is if you don't enjoy playing on a crisis because you find it boring or it's just not fun to play, then don't play it. Like if you want to play on Researcher because you actually enjoy the mechanic of the game that's breeding, then play Researcher. If you enjoy
Don't let
keys,
anyone tell you that it should that you can't or shouldn't.
Yeah, like I think like at the core root, like develop a plan for it so you're not just getting mollywomped on it. But like if you enjoy a certain crisis, like just play it because you enjoy it. Like it's a game. Like we're here to play a game. We're here to have fun. Like and this is probably the best time to do it and just like have fun with it.
It's a whole new world right now.
Whole new world. Whole new world. Is there anything else you want to touch on? Any closing thoughts?
No, those are like all closing thoughts for me.
Okay, fair. All right, I got something to rein in our trying to change things as far as like the cast goes and all that type of stuff. I challenge the listeners to, in anywhere that they be taking Bill and Eyes, try Hella. Like, just stop taking Bill for your next game night or your next game and take Hella with Eyes instead of Bill and see how it feels.
I mean, unless you need him for affiliation because you're playing.
Yeah, that's fair. like if you're playing Guardians, it doesn't really work. But like if you're splashing Bill,
there we go. Yeah.
If you're splashing Bill for an Eyes play, take Hella instead of Bill and just see how it feels. Now, for anybody who's like not falling into that camp and wants something else to do, play Senators. Like literally go play Senators and like see how fun that game is. Like Senators is just really just a fun game.
Fight in the middle.
Right in the middle. All right. I guess you wanna say the thing.
Well, I guess with that, we've been the Rogue Agents, and you've been a listener.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Maximum effort. In this war, there's no surrender. He's out of line, but he's right. Who the hell is Bucky? You don't like a fair fight. I think you're wrong. Which part? All of it.
Think you're the only superhero in the world?
Touché.
I thought you were gonna say the going gets tough thing. I never know how to say it right, and you do. I thought that's what you were gonna say.
I'm not even sure where, like, so if it's the going gets tough or the going gets rough, I haven't decided like, which one of those. I think it's like
I think
when the going gets rough, the tough go rogue.
There it is. I like that one the most.
That's
tough. Joey says tough.
All right. Well,
we're there.
We'll figure it out one of these days.
Maybe. We'll see. That was good. I enjoyed that. That was like. Do you think that I'm just crazy and my ideas are just off the wall, or do you think
no, I don't.
Is actually helpful?
I think that you're a little bit blind to how good the current crises. You're a little blind to that because you're still trying to defend it. Like, no, it works. It's like, there's no one's doubting that anymore. Just that I think that you actually have really good crises currently picked out for your X-Force builds. Yeah. And I agree with you on Senators. I think that the one thing we didn't really touch on that I think is still something that people should think about, so maybe this should have been my final thought, but it's like I didn't have a good way to phrase it, so I'm still not going to. But basically, we don't know who's going to like rise above, like who the cream of the crop are on some of these new scenarios right now. The cream of the crop's gonna rise up. Like we don't know who that is yet.
By far one of my favorite Randy Savage like interviews because he just keeps pulling creamers out of nowhere. Like I've watched that video so many times and I'm like, where does he pull them from? Like I can understand like stacking like 3 in your hand, but after 3, it's like where are they? Like where is he hiding?
My man's got big hands. Like I don't know what to say. There's like 5 in each hand.
Yeah, like he just. Oh man, I love that video.
So like I don't know. I know that you're getting some games into Inhumans. I feel like Inhumans on Senators is probably one of the better teams for it, especially if it's the Rhino Pyro team.
So talking with Sooner, he doesn't actually like Senators all that much because of the
He's not running Pyro. Is he running Rhino?
No, I don't think so. He's got Apex. He's high on Apex.
Yeah. So those are completely different teams, in my opinion.
And it is. And I do think like Inhumans is probably the list that scares me the most on Senators. But the thing is now what I love about it against Inhumans is, and what I love about Senators, is they are right where I want them. Like round 1, end of round 1, they are right where I want them, and I love that about Senators.
It was in my initial rounds of Black Order Crises that I was testing when I was testing Black Order Crises, because it's a lot of points on the table, but like I said, like they wind up on the ground. Like like you just paint the target, you pick up Senator, you become the target.
Yeah, that's typically that's very much what I do. Is like once I start killing people carrying Senators, I'm like, and this is gonna go that way, and it's not gonna get picked up the rest of the game. Because now if you go to pick it up, you're just going to be out in limbo and not contributing to the game at all, really.
Yeah, or you bring them back in, and you're like, oh, you're going to walk even closer to me, and you'll get ended, because you dropped it when I dazed you.
I guess
so
that
injured.
depends on like where the VP's at. Like, I guess if they're ahead, I want to bring them in, and if they're like behind, I'm going to send it out. So that way it's like, yeah. But no,
and if it's like one of those, because there's just so many points on the table with that like you have to pick them up with your hitters, and it's like, well, okay, when you get to daze a hitter, now you're like, okay, I'm gonna put that away from the fight. Yeah. So if you're gonna do something with your hitter now, it's not
my current struggle with. So this is like something I think that's kind of glorious about the whole 3-list thing. Is I'm very much a fan that you should probably be bringing either Fury, Elektra, or Daredevil in your list right now. I think they're huge at the moment. My biggest struggle point right now is which one do I want for which list is the hardest one. like I love Elektra. I get that. Elektra works, and Daredevil. Like I'm down to Elektra is like mobility, Mystic Pierce. Daredevil is he's gonna take hits all freaking day, and slight mobility, and then Fury is like I'm gonna help dictate where this piece goes, as well as I'm gonna put out quality attacks, as well as I bring Eye in the Sky. So I think for X-Force I'm kind of leaning towards Fury, just for Eye in the Sky alone, because I already have Escort in the list. If I just drop Escort for Eye in the Sky, it's kind of like no, I have a better Escort to safety.
I can see that. I've run them both.
I ran all 3, and
it gets a little weird.
Like,
no. I mean, I run them both. Like I've run Escort and Eyes in the same list.
The only thing is Fury doesn't like spinning the power for it, just because like he wants to be doing his power for other things.
Well, so that's where. Like when we chatted briefly about Fury Grunts this week, that's my point about how they ruin his economy. Yeah. If you sell out the Grunts, like his economy takes a pretty nasty hit. Yeah, but if you don't, right? Like if you don't need them to do something, if you can basically put the Grunts and Fury in position to be like one of those first, I'm gonna take this off of your. I'm gonna pry that out of your cold dead fingers. Grabs. I think that his power economy goes, through the roof at that point.
Yeah. No, that's completely fair. But I've been happy. Midnight Suns have been really fun too, and I like this whole like not taking a character across and Crisis across. It's been really fun for building. And like
it creates some interesting holes. So I dug into that, I did find the timelines, like press conference or press release that they did. So I listened through that, and it sounds like my guess is that it looks like it's going to be 5 affiliations.
Yeah, and that's the part that I don't quite like about it. Is I wish it was all affiliations across the board, and not like you're gonna have 5 affiliations that we give you to choose from. Yeah. Because I don't want to play Avengers. I don't want to play Cabal. Like, I don't like that.
I don't love the idea of the game's primary format, or not primary, premier format being you have to play Avengers, Cabal, X-Men, Brotherhood, and what? Like what's the last one? X-Force? Or even the last 2? Like if they do if it's a 5th and a 6th affiliation that come through. Like, okay,
Yeah.
like I can accept that if those affiliations are going to get like extra attention
Yeah.
so that like they're largely well balanced against each other. Like I guess, but then like what does that do for the splashing rules then
Yeah.
at that point?
And it
How
very
are
much
those
is-
rules affected?
It also just very much turns into like, which I don't hate, but it turns into like who's the best at this, like meta shot, and not just the game.
Yeah. I love the strain that the format puts on roster building
Yeah.
by having to assuming that, you know, my assumption is right, and it is like no repeats across 30 characters, 30 tactics, and 18 crisis. Like that sounds great to me.
Yeah.
I love the strain that puts on roster building. I don't love the limited aspect of the format.
Yeah, I don't
And
like
that
being
they're-
forced. I don't want to be forced into an affiliation. That's all
Yeah.
it comes down to for me. I'll bring 30 models to an event. I'll build these rosters. I want to be able to pick what I'm playing. I don't want to be locked into an affiliation.
Well, I mean, you and I both have a love for mutants.
Yeah.
You love X-Force specifically. I love Black Order, like on a completely different note, right? And like literally being told you can't bring these models to this premiere event is sad for me. Like it's like, oh, no, not sad. It's just it's disappointing
That's fair.
because it's like, well, that's
I want to play my toys.
yeah. And they're not banned or anything, right? But like that's the other thing is that like I do agree with people when they say that our community is too small, that it's hard to have multiple formats running side by side because people want to play what they want to play.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like Mojo Ball and like pulling out like, you know, a Mojo Ball team from my, you know, roster of 10 or the 30 models that I have with me tonight.
Yeah.
I'm talking about you want to play Avengers, Cabal, Brotherhood, X-Men, Guardians, we'll say, right? And like that's the pool that we have to choose from.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
I'm not.
That's not what I
interested
wanted
in
to
it.
do tonight.
Yeah. I'm not. All right. Well, I think we should wrap up here. I'm gonna turn Twitch off. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us.
Thanks, guys.
And all that. Everybody have a good night.